us here at the Commons online. My name is Natalie. I work at the library for the Knowledge and Learning Commons. And for the past few months, we've been working in collaboration with the Staff Counsellors Office, which is part of HRMS at UN Geneva, to be able to share with you different online sessions related to how we can support our well-being and our mental health during this time of many changes concerning COVID-19. So in the past, we've held sessions on keeping a healthy mind, ways to cope with anxiety, and also mindfulness sessions in English and in French, which are continuing every week. So if you'd like to replay some of the previous sessions, or you'd like to even join us online for the mindfulness sessions in English and French every week, you can find the details to connect on our website. And the website is actually on the screen right now for you to see. We'll also provide a link towards the end of the session. So we welcome you to join us if you like. So today we continue with our staff counsellors. We have Mary Bridget Leahy and Rosa van der Heide. And our topic today, as you see on the screen, is adapting to business as unusual. How to prepare yourself emotionally for the return to the workplace. I'm sure that many of you, if not all of you, know that we are gradually going to return to the workplace, the Palais for UN Geneva staff from 8th of June, but it won't be all of us, and it will take, of course, some time for us to gradually return. And if you missed the Division of Administration's live event on MS Teams last Thursday on the 14th of May, we really encourage you to watch that event. There's a video recording. We provide a link to that at the end of this session, as it provides a lot of practical and relevant details concerning the key phases of the return and what this actually means physically in terms of practically being in the Palais, as well as many questions you may have with regard to human resources. So we do encourage you to watch that, but also to follow on with the Director General's UNOG broadcasts, which are regular and provide running updates with regard to the back to office planning. So some of us will return soon, but some of us won't return in June, but the back to office planning and the return to the workplace affects us all, because some of our colleagues will go back and some of us will continue to work from. But also have different concerns we may have about the return to the workplace, but also return to different parts of life as well, because restrictions are easing in the countries that most of us live in France and Switzerland. So we all have different unique situations. Some of us are excited to go back. Some of us are maybe disappointed we can't go back earlier. Some have other worries about returning to work and to different parts of life in a new reality. So we are unique, but I guess the thing we have in common is that together we're facing many unknowns. So we're really in this together. So our staff counsellors will now share with you some of the more normal emotional reactions that you might face, and then give practical tips for us all on how we can help ourselves as well as those around us to be able to manage different reactions and emotions. You're also welcome to ask your questions throughout the session. You'll see on the right of your screen that there's a Q&A section, so please don't hesitate throughout the session to type in your questions or even share your ideas with us about how you're coping with these new realities. I'm sure that many of us, many colleagues will be benefiting from ideas you have that you're helping yourself as well. So enough from me. We'll deal with different questions and ideas that you might have in the second half of the session after Mary and Rosa's presentation. So thank you again for joining us, and over to you, Mary, to begin.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. And thank you for all the support. A lot of you have joined us in the past. This is now week 10. And like Natalie said, this is about, this is for all staff, consultants and interns, those of you that work in the Palais, but also people outside in different agencies in Geneva, or also we have some people joining us from around the world. So you're all very welcome. So let's just start with an introduction. So my name is Mary Leahy and I'm one of the staff counsellors based in UN Geneva. Then with me here today is Rosa van der Heide. Rosa is also a staff counsellor. And then we have Sharmila Ensler, and Sharmila is our staff counselling assistant. She's with us today too, but she won't be speaking at the moment, although she might answer a question later. So the role of the Staff Counsellor's Office is, in case some of you don't know, it's a confidential service where staff can come and speak to us. Again, that's staff, consultants, interns, sometimes retired staff as well, about problems that they're experiencing, and we either help you solve the problem or we can refer you to somebody who can. We work in collaboration with the ombudsperson, with medical services, with the rest of the HR team, with legal, with OSLA, with various people. But if you do want us to help you to speak to one of our partners, you do have to give us written consent. So mostly what happens is staff come and they tell us what's happening, and then we try to help them find solutions to their problems. We also have a network of counsellors and psychologists and psychotherapists, both in Geneva and in the wider community, that speak a range of languages, or you might want to see a man. So we can also put you into contact with them if we think that you might benefit from some long-term counselling. Usually when people come to see us, maybe it's 2 or 3 sessions or up to 4, but then depending on the circumstances, sometimes a little bit longer. But we will help you decide what's best. And then we also do things like this, webinars with the Knowledge and Learning Commons. Normally we would do events actually in the Palais where everyone's invited. So we're very grateful to Natalie and her team for helping us still be able to come and meet you virtually. And we do workshops with the Centre for Learning and Multilingualism, so you can sign up for workshops. At the moment, we're running a 5 workshops on building resilience during this time of COVID. And like Natalie said, we also do mindfulness 2 days a week, once in English and once in French. So obviously a lot of stuff that we do is highly confidential and quite sensitive. So if there's something that you want to ask or something that you're worried about, maybe someone who already has a pre-existing maybe mental health condition, or someone in the family has, or you've got something very personal, please do reach out to us at staffcounsellor@un.org, and then we will ring you back and have a conversation. Of course, you're welcome to share whatever you like here in the questions and answers, but just to be aware, we won't go into something individual that might be very sensitive. That would be best. We would see you individually for that. So thank you. And then, so what is it that we're going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the current situation, and of course, returning to work as unusual, returning to the workplace. So while the vast majority of the UN staff in Geneva will continue to telecommute in the coming weeks, the back to office planning is progressing and limited staff will return to the premises from the 8th of June. This will be followed by a reassessment at the end of June to decide on a gradual increase in the number of staff that may return to the premises. And like Natalie said, you can keep up to date with the broadcasts from the Director General, and also there's lots of information on iSeek. Sometimes it's too much information and you may feel overloaded. However, there's good advice there. So as most of you know, at the moment, they're asking for just those staff who can't perform their duties at home to come back to the Palais, and the idea is that it's 30% or less, because of course we'll have to do physical distancing, and then it's difficult for the Palais to stay clean, like door handles and things like this. So they want to protect all of us, and this is why we'll go back very gradually and slowly, making sure that it's as safe as possible. So this physical return to the workplace could bring up mixed feelings for people. Some of us will be happy to go back to the workplace, but there are varied unknowns and uncertainties about the new reality of what's that going to be like. And how can we prepare ourselves psychologically and emotionally to deal with these uncertainties? So during this webinar, we will discuss some normal emotional reactions and concerns that you may have, and we'll provide some tips on how you can deal with these changes. And like Natalie said, you're also welcome to ask your questions during the session over at the side in the Q&A. And Just a little bit more as well, the Staff Counsellor's office falls under HRMS and we work closely with our colleagues at HR. So we would like to remind you that we are trained as psychologists and psychotherapists. We're here to support you emotionally and to give tips aimed at improving your mental health and well-being. We're not in the best position to answer HR-related matters. That's why it's important to refer to the HR administrative guidelines and the DG's broadcasts, and also to attend town halls by the Division of Administration and by the Staff Council. Prisca and Ian gave a very good town hall recently. So this is a new situation for all of us, and there's no perfect solution to deal with this situation. There's no one solution that can be used for all of us, as we're all different. But if you are confused and if you don't know where to turn, do contact the Staff Counsellor's office and we will try to answer your questions, and if we can't, then we'll point you in the right direction and make sure you do get the answers to your questions. So just to remember, you're not on your own. We are here and we can help guide you and support you. So now let's have a look at some possible reactions and feelings. So the current situation has much uncertainty and many unknowns, which of course trigger uncomfortable reactions and feelings. Some days you may be fine, other days you may start to feel anxious, or you may feel grumpy or irritable or in a bad mood and maybe not know why, but it's because of the uncertainty and because we're all actually, as well as having to work and take care of families and friends and your own health and well-being, we all have to also have COVID-19 on our minds. Our life has changed. Our outside of work life has changed as well, which is quite tough to deal with some days. So you may have thousands of questions that will not be answered, and we understand that, and that trying to find answers will help you feel reassured. But today, this situation is new for all of us, so we may not be able to give you all of the answers today. However, we will try and support you to get through this. So the main thing to think about is we want you to know that it's normal to have feelings of anxiety, worry, concern about the return to the workplace. This is an abnormal situation for all of us. So it's more important than ever to support each other and get through this together. And if you are having one of those days where you're feeling grumpy or irritable or tired, maybe just tell somebody, maybe tell your colleagues, look, I'm just feeling overwhelmed today or tired. Maybe ask for some help. Maybe someone can help you do your tasks. Or maybe you can just take a break for an hour and go for a walk, have a cup of tea, rest, and then come back tomorrow with maybe more energy and feeling better. Because as human beings, our emotions will go up and down. So don't be too hard on yourself. If there's a day where you just don't get much done or you're just not feeling well, that's okay. We're in this for the long run, so do try to take care of yourself, and then hopefully tomorrow will be better. So today we'll share some possible feelings for you. So how can you feel that this is normal, that you're not the only one experiencing things like this? You haven't done something wrong. There's not something wrong with you. This is quite normal. So in the next slides, we'll discuss some possible ways to help you get through those days where you feel hopeless and overwhelmed. We'll help you find some tools to deal with it. So some possible feelings could be that actually many staff will be happy to go back to the workplace. For some people, working at home has become too much. You never switch off. Often people can work, they might have a break and have dinner, but then they'll come back to working again, or they visually see their computer, their things from work that would be normally in the office, maybe files or their big screens and things like that. It's quite hard to switch off. So, but when we go back, what will the work environment look like? Will it be still okay to share an office? Will it be safe? Will people obey the rules of keeping the 6 feet distance? And what will I do in case someone comes and stands too close to me and I don't want to be rude? What about things like shaking hands in the future, especially for those of you that have to meet people outside of the UN? What are the norms and customs that you would normally do to be polite to someone and make a guest feel welcome? What will replace that? Then what about the security measures put in place regarding COVID-19? For example, they don't want us all going in at the same time so that there'll be queues in security. This will be more important later on for visitors coming through. So it's going to be quite hard for the people working in security to manage that and to make sure that people stay safe, but also that they don't get frustrated by having to queue too long. So for us, how does it impact my work? What will happen also with the new SHP project and the open office plans? As most of you know, the work is now continuing on that, and probably people won't move until 2021. So that gives us a bit of time. So there's questions where we don't always have the answers, and we need to think about that. And when we don't have the answer, what can we control? What can we do? And of course, it's very important if you're feeling a concern to talk to members of your team, talk to your manager or your supervisor if you're not feeling comfortable, and ask them to help you find solutions. So for example, someone might decide they want to go back, or they want to go back maybe 2 days a week. Maybe they have a situation at home, but actually all of us, even if you don't have young children at home, everybody's tired, everybody's dealing with extended family or elderly relatives, or maybe you're helping your neighbours. So you might go back all enthusiastic, thinking this is great, I'll go back to the office. And then you might find yourself getting very physically tired, or you might have to take public transport. So it's important to speak with your supervisor and figure out what works for you. You may want to just go back 1 or 2 days a week at the beginning until you get more comfortable and used to it. So, but the main thing is to remember that it's normal to have feelings of anxiety and fear during these abnormal times. And then also just to say, for those of you maybe who do want to go back and maybe you're not able to go back, that's okay too. You will get back there eventually, but that can be quite challenging too. So this little bit is important, stigma, and often Rosa and I and Shamila were used to talking about stigma in terms of mental health. As you know, mental health and problems can be very hidden. People can feel very embarrassed to talk about mental health and problems, especially depending on the culture that they're from. And maybe it's not acceptable to talk about it, or maybe it is. And of course, for people from younger generations, luckily, some stigma is being broken and it's easier to ask for help. But today we thought we'd look at stigma around COVID-19, and just to remind ourselves to be aware of our own biases and our own prejudices. It can be quite scary nowadays when you go to the supermarket and you see people wearing masks and gloves, and then you hear about some people washing their food when they come home, even washing the plastic with bleach. So, you know, people deal with things in different ways, and it's important to deal with it in the best way that makes you feel comfortable. But to think about fear and anxiety around COVID-19, it can actually lead to social stigma towards people. And for example, this can happen, stigma and discrimination, when a disease such as COVID-19 is associated with a population or a nationality, even though, of course, not everyone in that population or from that region is specifically at risk for COVID-19. And stigma can also occur after a person has been discharged from quarantine, even though maybe they never had it, they're not at risk, maybe there's someone who's practiced very good personal hygiene. However, there still could be some association of, oh, I need to stay away from that colleague for a while, or a colleague may have told you that a family member was ill. So, but it's okay. It's normal for us to have maybe some feelings of fear and maybe some thoughts of, oh, I need to be more careful around this colleague. But then we just need to be aware of that and actually tell ourselves that, you know, this is a fear, but it's not based in any reality. But at least by being aware of it, we can challenge ourselves and we can make sure we don't treat anybody badly. So yeah, it's very important just to be aware of that. And if we're maybe having some concerns, just to kind of check in with ourselves and wonder, maybe today you're feeling a bit more anxious or you're feeling a bit tired. So what will this new routine be like? What will the day look like? Whoops, so Besides the difficulties that we faced during the times of telecommuting, you've probably also found ways that work for you. Perhaps you've created a new routine that suits you and your family members. This is now week 10. You may have started to like the period where you don't have to rush to the office in the morning and rush back to be on time for cooking meals maybe, or doing sports. I mean, I think the gyms are still closed, but maybe walking outside, running, maybe you have been able to prioritize that a little bit. I always think it's funny how they keep going on in the UK about people exercising, and suddenly everybody's demanding the right to exercise and be out for more than 1 hour a day, when many people before would never have even wanted to exercise. But it's the feeling of being told we can't do something that makes us want to do it more. And of course, when you're working at home, it's actually very important to go outside every day, even if it's just a little walk, a short walk, or if you're lucky enough to have a garden or a balcony, just to even go out there. But if you can, now might be the time to go out for a little bit longer to get yourself gradually used to it. Ideally walking 10,000 steps a day if you can. You may have noticed the challenge with the UN. I think it's actually 6,000 steps, but normally doctors and dietitians would recommend at least 10,000 steps for most of us. So what about these upcoming changes? You might worry about putting in place a new routine that works for everyone. You may be, for example, living in France, and you may be worried about having to cross the borders and perhaps queuing at the borders. Then, of course, even though they keep announcing all the children are back at school, it's not that easy because, as most of you know, it's restricted hours, it's changed hours. I know somebody and her children are just going back to school for 2 hours in the afternoon, which is quite difficult because then she has to drive and wait for them and drive them home again. And then others, maybe their children might be just going to school for 2 days a week. So it's important to share any problems you're having with your team and with your manager, and try and find out what can be a flexible solution that can work for you, so you don't feel additional stress and that you're able to manage, because things like that are outside of your control. You don't dictate what happens when your children return to school, or you might not be able to prevent a big queue at a border one day, but that's why the hours will still be quite flexible. So before, when we were normally, the core working hours were between 10 and 4, there's some flexibility there. So I would advise you just speak with your manager and your team and let them know, well, these are the hours I'll be working today. This takes the pressure off us. And then also back in the office, you may have been used to having lunch with certain colleagues, having coffee, or having daily meetings with different people. This will all change for the moment as well. While they will have some catering facilities, everything will be opening slowly. So going back to the office will not be the same as it was before the start of COVID-19. It will have changed a little for all of us. But hopefully we'll also have learned some good tips. Maybe for some people, maybe they've started taking better care of themselves, or many of you that have joined today are maybe more aware of protecting yourself and your mental health so that you don't get sick or you don't feel overwhelmed. So that's very good. So now I'm just going to hand over to Rosa. She's going to join now, and then I'll be back later with Natalie for the questions and answers. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining, and it's a pleasure to have you all here. And it's unfortunate that I'm not able to see your faces, but I really would like to ask you to also to share your ideas in the dialogue, like Natalie and Mary already mentioned. Because we want this to be a dialogue among all staff members, interns, consultants, etc. Because we can learn from each other, as we all share the same and common concerns. Also, like the Secretary General has mentioned, there's no one size fits all. So we all have to find ways that works for you as an individual. So does it mean, and we're going to discuss now a few tips, a few ways that how you can deal with the continued uncertainty that we still don't know. Are we going back to the office? When are we going back to the office? Maybe my full-time telecommuting will be extended in line with the UN policies. So we are going to share a few tips. I also would like to invite you to maybe answer the question, what helps you to prepare emotionally to continue living in uncertainty? This can be possibly returning back to the workplace, or to extend full-time telecommuting in line with the UN policies. So I'd like you to ask you, what are your coping styles? And please share with us in the Q&A box. So I'm now going to share a few tips, but the most important I want to emphasize is that it doesn't mean that these tips we all need to master to be able to feel ready to go back to the workplace or to continue full-time telecommuting. It's a new situation and we all need to find ways that works for you. And we can try and we can sometimes see, well, it doesn't work, and then try something else. So the first thing that I want to discuss with you is transparent and open communication. In times of uncertainty, creating assurance through regular and effective dialogue with everyone in your team. This can really be helpful. This can be colleagues amongst each other. This can be supervisors to supervisees and the other way around. Open communication and transparency from all sides is key in situations like this. Because we need to also understand each other's perspective. We're all different and we need to understand each other's concerns to also be able to find ways to deal with it and to work in a pleasant way together. I also know that managers have lots on their plates at the moment. And sometimes you might, as a manager, you might not have the time to talk to each of your team individually. So maybe try to plan a meeting with everyone together and be open and honest about what you know to be real and generate optimism and faith in the future and truly believe in your team's potential. And also, besides communication with your team, also communicate clearly with others. For example, if you are one of the persons that are returning back to the workplace, and you face a difficult situation, for example, you feel very uncomfortable because someone comes too close to you, it's important to share that. And I think in some cultures it's more common to be open and transparent than in other cultures, but I think it's very important to share from your perspective. So we always say the I statement. So I feel uncomfortable, maybe would you mind to take a step back, or I take a step back because I feel uncomfortable, you're too close by, I prefer to follow the guidelines of the organization and the host country. Also, discuss ways with your team on new ways of working together, a new code of conduct that you feel maybe more assured. So what are alternatives for shaking hands? We might all feel very uncomfortable that we're not able to shake hands anymore. But perhaps you can suggest, if this is something that you like, to find the Japanese greeting a good alternative. Also, talk with supervisors and colleagues how much this situation has impacted you, so that people know where you stand, and to find new ways that works for everyone. I think communication is a very strong tool that helps you feel better. And I think it's very important to remain open to other opinions and to make sure that we don't judge others' opinions, how they feel and think. And we're in a situation that it's very important that we support each other. A second point that I would like to discuss is to give yourself time to adjust. That sounds much easier than it is, because we all expect so much from ourselves. We expect from ourselves to be ready, to be able to cope with the situation, but it's also okay to allow yourself some time. We can't expect from ourselves to feel happy all the time and to adapt to a new and uncertain period from one day to another. So I really want to invite you to try to be kind to yourself and to allow yourself some time to adjust to the new situation, and also to the situation that there's still lots of uncertainty, because we also don't know exactly what will happen. So I think it's important to remain open and to surrender to what's coming to you, and to be tolerant to yourself and not too hard. We need to empower ourselves instead of putting ourselves down. So maybe it would be good to not expect from yourself, if you're one of the persons that go back to the office, to not be 100% effective the first day returning back to the office. Take the time to observe the new place. What are the new guidelines? What is the new situation? Think of new routines and make yourself comfortable in the new context. Take some time to adjust to the new situation and environment. I also know that it's a difficult time, so some of us might worry, and they might worry all the time. So it's of course an uncomfortable feeling when you're worrying all the time, and it can also disturb. It can have an impact on your concentration, on your sleep, etc. So one of the things that it has proven to be effective for some people is to found a worrying window. They find it to be sometimes effective. So allow yourself to think of all the worries at the same time each day, so a worry window, and force yourself to stop worrying during the rest of the day. This might work for some people and it doesn't work for others. Another practical way to help our minds keep present instead of worrying all the time is to keep a journal. Daily or every other day or once a week that works for you, and write down what's going through your minds, how you feel, what happened to you, and it can be really useful for emptying your mind and looking back. And also the process of writing your thoughts and your feelings and the events of the day can have a really relieving effect. The third point that I would like to discuss with you, and that's also something Mary already mentioned, it's about controlling. Accept that the situation is uncertain and that you cannot control everything. And that's the most difficult thing on earth, because we all have a basic need for control in our lives. I want to emphasize that that's also normal. We might express our need for control to varying extents and in different ways because we're all different. But our need for control has a strong influence on all our lives. And I think it's perhaps the deepest need that we have is a sense of control. So it's important to know that we all have it, and also that we feel uncomfortable when we're out of control. We experience a powerful and uncomfortable tension between the need for control and the evidence of inadequate control. And one of the most disturbing things about COVID-19 is the feeling of powerlessness, of being unable to do something about it. We're unable to control the virus and how the situation will be, and not knowing how the return to the workplace will look like. This can bring a very uncomfortable feeling. So I want you to know that it's normal that we feel uncomfortable in situations like this where we have little control. So what I find important to share is one of the tips that we can give is try and increase your sense of control. By surrender and accept the things that are beyond your control, and to focus more on the things that are in your area of influence. So kind of shifting your attention, because this will be increasing your well-being. So for instance, if you are worried about the new work environment, then try to read all the guidelines and broadcasts provided by the DG to understand how the organization works to make it a safer place for everyone. Also make sure to know the rules of the host country in case you will go outside the premises when you are maybe going back to the office, to know what the rules are. For example, if you're living in France and you're not used to Swiss guidelines, make sure that you know it. This will improve your sense of control. Also, another ways to be able to increase your control is to focus on how can you comply with the regulations by maintaining your own distance, your own nutrition. These are all things that you can control. Your own movement and exercises. What do you do with your spare time? Or what do you do with bringing your lunch? I know that some people might be worried that all the cafeterias are closed. I mean, it's interesting for some people that's more important than others. For example, I'm from the Netherlands. We're very used, it's a very bad habit to bring sandwiches. So for me, it wouldn't be a problem. But I know from many cultures, food is very important, and having a good proper meal during lunch. So this is something maybe you can prepare bringing a lunch to the office, and this is something that's in your control. Other things that you don't know how you will feel comfortable with all the security measures put in place in the UN regarding COVID-19. So it's also something that you might first need to experience. And as I said before, don't expect yourself to be prepared for everything. Also allow yourself time to see how you will experience it, because it's different per person. The fourth point that I would like to discuss with you is to live in the present. Most of our time is spent in the past or in the future, rather than actually in the present moment. And often the past can be problematic because it's something that can't be changed. It's done, set in stone, immutable and immovable. And anticipating the future can also be challenging because, as we discussed before, no matter how much we would like to convince ourselves otherwise, we can't really control the direction in which things will go. And that's also now with returning back, with returning to the office. We do not know exactly what will go to happen. So staying in the present means staying right here, not in the past and not in the future. And that sounds easy, and the steps that I'm going to share with you how to do it, it's not rocket science, but it can take some time to get used to it because we're used to think about the past and the future. But steps that I will discuss can lead us to experience of profound attention and a direct experience of the moments that we're in. So one of the most important things, and it's a very basic thing, is to take a deep breath. Breath, along with change, is the only constant, and being present starts with breathing. Simply draw a deep breath and let it out through your nose. And that's also something related to the second point, is the practice of mindfulness and meditation. If you have been attending previous webinars of trainings from the Staff Counsellors office, we try to emphasize, because lots of research has proven that practicing mindfulness and meditation can help us to live in the present, and it has a positive impact on our well-being. Of course, as I mentioned in the beginning, it doesn't work for not for everyone, so don't feel obliged to practice mindfulness. It's just a tip that you might try. Another thing is to be a witness and to becoming aware of what you're doing on a daily basis, exactly what you're doing in any given moment, and bear witness to it. Observe it, name it, and stand away from it all at once, and try to follow the following cycle by first breathing, attending, then witnessing, releasing, and then breathing again. That helps us to be living more in the present. And this cycle can really change the way that we experience our world. So maybe when you would go back to the office, if you're one of the persons that might go back in June, during lunch things will change because things are not open. Maybe this is something that you can try during your lunchtime. Maybe you can go outside in the park of the UN and try to live in the present and to observe maybe the nature and other things that you see, the beautiful building. Another thing that I would like to mention is that the UNOG Staff Coordinating Council has created a link with an overview of online activities for well-being, and that you can find here through the following link. That can be very useful. The fifth point that I would like to share with you is to focus on the positive aspects. I know that we as human beings are more familiar with and focused on the obstacles holding them back instead of the resources that enables us to succeed. This is even more common in times of crisis. That said, I know that from research, the practice of gratitude is one of the most time-tested and proven methods for enhancing our resilience. And it's not easy to go and have a transition from only seeing the obstacles in our lives to better appreciating what has helped us. But it's something maybe I want to invite you to maybe start doing it on a daily basis, because it's really benefiting for our well-being. So maybe if you have a pen and paper next to you, maybe I would like to invite you to do it right away. Maybe write down 5 positives that you experienced, maybe this morning, or maybe if the day just started, maybe from yesterday. And it doesn't need to be huge. You don't have to think of huge positive things, but maybe yesterday you were able to go out for a little walk and you saw a beautiful flower. Maybe you look out of the window. You looked out of the window this morning and you could see the sunshine. Maybe food. Maybe you had a really nice breakfast this morning, or a really good meal yesterday. So maybe you can write down 5 things, and I would like to invite you to do that on a regular basis. Best would be daily, to really start more focusing on the positive aspects rather than the negative aspects. Also, what I would like to ask you is, for the people who might go back to the office, I know there are lots of concerns, worries, and that's okay to have that. I'm not going to, as I mentioned before, we don't all need to be happy about that. But I also would like to invite you to see, in case we will go back to the office, and the fact that some measures have been announced, also to see the positive in that. For example, the fact that there are now new measures and that gradually some people might go back to the office, it is also a sign that things will go, that things have improved, that things are going better. Also, for example, some people might be worried that they need to take the stairs instead of the elevators because they're locked. It can also be something positive because it might help you to feel fitter and to feel better. So I really want you to find a balance. It's okay sometimes to have emotions and to feel sad and you have worries. In the same time, I think it also really needs to train our brain to focus on the positives. We have a job, we have a salary, and to think about these things as well. The last point, and I think that's an important point, and also already mentioned by Mary, is that talk to someone about your worries and concerns, because for some people it's quite normal to talk about it, but others feel like, oh, I don't want to bother other people with my emotions and feelings. It's okay to share that, and don't suffer alone. Reach out for help from family, friends, neighbors. And if you really don't have anyone to reach out to, know that the Staff Counsellor's office is here to provide emotional support as well. And we also can refer you to experts here in the community. So I think what I really would like to see now, if there are any questions, maybe I wasn't able to follow the Q&A, but we can see also, maybe I would really like to see how, what kind of coping mechanisms do you have dealing with this? Because these are a few tips, but I'm sure you also have found ways to deal with it. So please share with us. I'm now going to hand over back to Nathalie. And she will see what kind of questions and comments you have in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rosa, and also Mary, for these 5 very practical tips and all the information you've provided us. I know even for me, this has been really helpful. So like Rosa just mentioned, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to type them in now in the Q&A session, or even your ideas, because we all have different ways of coping, as was mentioned. As we wait for any questions to come in, I did have some questions also for you, Mary and Rosa, based on the tips you provided. One was about the writing, the journaling. So I have been starting to do this based on your previous sessions, writing down some thoughts before at the end of the day to get them out, but also the gratitude journaling. And some of the questions I found to write answers to is the things that we're very grateful for during a day. So 5 things, even if they're small. But other things I found were, today I accomplished, or I had a positive experience with, even something I did for someone, or I was proud of someone else. Would these be questions you would recommend? What other questions could we ask as part of like a gratitude practice or a journaling practice?
Thank you, Natalie. Yes, I think it's very important. It's about, it's also about, Rosa talked a little bit about it here, and we've talked about it a little bit before. It's about changing the way we think. You might have often heard of negative patterns, which we can get really, fall down into a hole, and we can feel really bad, and we can catastrophize everything. So by trying to be grateful and trying to pick out things that are good, it actually helps us to change the way our brain functions and our brain thinks. So say, for example, yesterday you may have had a really bad day. It's Monday, you might be really tired, even though you've just had the weekend, but maybe you couldn't switch off and you were stuck at home. And then maybe things went wrong during the day. But it's really important to look at what went right. And it could be even something that you made yourself a nice dinner, you had a nice shower, and maybe took the time to put moisturizer on. It could be, like you said, that you've got maybe a nice comment from a staff member, a colleague that you helped, or they helped you and you remember to say thank you. But it's about taking the time to pick apart our day. At the moment, a lot of people might be worried about their own physical health or a colleague's health or a family member's health, or of course somebody's mental health as well, because for some people that struggle, this has been really difficult to get through. So it's about changing the way we think, and by actually appreciating something, one thing even, or three things, it helps us to actually have a sense that things are all right in the world and that everything's going to be okay. And another very important thing about journaling is often we go asleep at night, or we can't sleep because we have worries. So if you can write down the things that are worrying you and the things that you're grateful before you go to bed, and put them on a notebook and maybe put them in another room in your kitchen or something, because it's never a good idea to have paperwork in your bedroom because we just don't sleep so well. But this helps us to get the thoughts out of our head and to actually then go to sleep with a positive thought in your head. This will really help. And just to kind of go back quickly, thank you to Michelle. She's reminded us that the gyms are open in Geneva, so that's a good thing. That's very important. And of course, the weather is improving, so we can, well, the weather's good this week, so we can go outside. And also, Rosa just mentioned about the cafeteria and bringing lunch, but maybe someone can update us. I just had a look at the broadcast, but of course I can't find it right now. But the bar press will be open, and the other bar deleg, I think, and also the cafeteria will be reopening. It's just they won't have the salad bar, and the people working there will be protected with masks and with visors. So because that's important, some people are coming back to work because also they have a job, so it's good to get the economy moving and get them back to work as well. So it will be restricted, but there will be food in the Palais as well, provided for people who don't want to bring their own food. So just to know that. But of course, if you're someone who's anxious, or maybe you're having financial problems, you may want to bring your own food, or you just maybe don't want to bother having to walk all the way to the cafeteria. Or of course, if you're in one of the agencies, you might need to check with your facilities and people what's open and what's not open. But some facilities will be open, which is good news. Thanks. And I don't know if Rosa wants to add anything.
Just a tiny thing with regards to your question, Natalie, because I think it's a very good question. How do we focus on the positives? Because sometimes it sounds easier than this, especially when we have the habit of focusing on the negatives. And I think very important is when we ask questions, it doesn't always need to be big, because sometimes when we think about what do we appreciate in life and what are we grateful for, we think about big things in life, but it can be also something very small that you're grateful for. That you were able to open up your laptop and start working. You're grateful that you can go out for a walk. And also, what I really like to ask myself when I want to focus on positives, what made me laugh on a daily basis? Because if you start thinking about actually, oh, I laughed about this, I laughed about that, that also is something positive. Or where am I proud of? This can be work related, this can be it can be personal. So to really start asking yourself some positive questions, what do I appreciate in life? What am I grateful for? That changes the way we think and helps us to think more positively. Over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Rosa and Mary. We have some more comments and questions that have come in. Some people are saying thank you to the team, so thank you for joining us. But also some ideas that have come in. Some things that I do when I feel stress increasing is to talk slower, almost pausing in every other word. So thank you for that idea. Maybe also related to breathing. And also another person has suggested reading, even for 15 minutes, to help clear the head. Any thoughts there, Rosa and Mary, on those two ideas?
I really like the things that have been shared. Thank you very much for sharing. Also the point when you really start to talk slower, almost every word. I think that also is a really good idea, and also helps us maybe to be more here in the present, because the focus is then on the here and now, and you really start to focus on the way you talk instead of all the other things around you. So I think it's a really a good idea, and I'm also gonna try it myself. So thank you very much for sharing. Mary, is there also anything you would like to share on this?
Yes, thank you everyone. It's really great for us to see the comments on the side, because also Rosa and I and Sharmila, we don't know everything. So it's actually really good. The idea of these webinars is to actually you know, because normally we would have these events in the library and everyone would come together and we'd have breakout groups and there'd be lots of interaction. So it's really good that you're here today with us and you're able to share some ideas and thoughts. And like Natalie said as well, about what webinars would be useful in the future, what helps and maybe what doesn't help. So it's great to get your feedback. And thank you. Somebody wrote a really nice message. It came up anonymous. Thanking us, so that's really nice to hear sometimes, because we sometimes feel we can't do enough. We're a small team, but of course that's how it is in the UN, so we do our best, but it's really great to know that we can do these in collaboration with Commons and reach out to as many people as possible, as many of you as possible, which is great. And I think, yeah, what's really important in life and going through life and when you go back to the office as well is sharing with your colleagues, or even now, if you have huddles or team chats, maybe sharing something that works for you. Like Rosa said, humor is really important. For example, my nephew has recently started using TikTok, and it makes me laugh all the time. I mean, his videos are rubbish. He's only 9, but it's nice to connect with him, and I see him every day now because he posts about 10 videos a day, and it makes me laugh, and that always makes me feel good. And music as well, the music there, the dancing, that's good. So it is really important to think of little things. It doesn't have to be huge things, because you may feel a bit trapped at the moment. Maybe you had plans for a really nice summer holiday and now you can't go anywhere, or even though some flight restrictions will be lifting, you may not feel safe to go anywhere. So it's maybe important to think of the little things that can make you happy, even if it's cooking nice meals for yourself, that can still work. So yeah, thanks Natalie.
Great. Okay, we still have a few questions coming in. There is one about how can we talk to our managers about the return to the office. Just a reminder that we cannot to be able to respond in terms of HR regulations. We do invite you to watch the recording from last week for the division in terms of human resources related issues about the return. But the question is very interesting. How do you propose one deals with a manager who is insisting you come back to the office? Rosa and Mary, perhaps you can give some insights on best ways we can help manage our emotions when we're communicating, or any anxiety that could come up when talking with our supervisors or our team members.
Yes, I think that's a very important question. I would advise that you prepare yourself and maybe have a notebook and a pen and write down some things that you want to get across in this meeting with your manager. Because it's true that in every team there'll be situations that are difficult, and for some teams they really have to come back to the office. They haven't been able to do their work at home, or the work has been different or slower. Or for some people, they want to come back because maybe they don't have the best equipment at home and their eyes are sore if they're working off a laptop or something. But I think what's important is to have a private conversation with your manager. Don't do it at a team meeting. This is an individual circumstance. And then have your points written down to say, you could start off by saying something positive, like thank you for your support during this difficult time. Then you could explain what your individual circumstances are and why you're feeling a fear or an anxiety about coming back to the office. It may be that you have a caring responsibility at home, or it may be that being at home has made your own anxiety or mental health worse, or you may have an existing condition where you're more vulnerable and you've been told by your doctor or the Swiss or French government to stay at home. So it's important to share your concerns with your manager and tell them why you don't want to come back to the office, and say to them, ask them, can they be a bit more flexible with you, or potentially could you do a different job or a different role if that's possible, because for some people they do have front office roles, so it's going to be quite difficult and you may have to come back. But maybe it could be, if they say you really have to come back, that you do it maybe 2 days a week rather than 5 days a week. And then if it's something really serious and you're really concerned, you can reach out to us and we will help you negotiate that and think about what you can say and how you can put your concerns forward. And you can also ask medical, like your own doctor in the community, for some advice if you're really concerned about a medical condition. So it's important to know that at the moment they only want 30% to come back, but it's true, there may be some roles where you may need to come back. For example, the interpreters, because some of those meetings will need to get going again. And I know in New York they're going to still do it from home, but there's a lot of technical equipment that interpreters need, and it can be quite difficult for them at home. But yeah, just don't be afraid to have that conversation, but maybe say something positive in your conversation as well, or offer to help in some way so that your manager doesn't feel that you're being negative maybe or complaining. Just explain to them the reasons why. What do you think, Rosa? Do you have anything to add, or is that maybe a good approach?
I think that's a very good advice, Mary, and I don't have much to add. The only thing that I would say is maybe it's also good to show that you're really willing to support the organization and to really do your work, so that you can really show that you're motivated. It's just maybe because of maybe of your health conditions or any conditions that you're not willing to return. Really explain it so that the other person understands it. And I think what's very important is to always focus on the I statement, and because very often when we are feeling anxious or we have strong emotions, we might say you this or you that, and then the other person might feel offended. So I think it's really important to keep it for yourself, that you are anxious because of this and that you think that this is better, and to really start an open communication, and also to understand the perspective of the manager, because I think maybe also managers are under high pressure. So really to kind of try to find ways to deal with this together. But I think it's very important to have a good conversation and to be open and honest with your supervisor to see how you can find ways to deal with this. So hopefully, I think this is answering your question. Maybe Natalie, are there any other questions?
Yeah.
I see some things coming in.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosa and Mary. Yes, we have about 3 minutes left. So thank you all for all the questions and comments, but we do have time for a few more. There is one question about how do we help our kids and teenagers deal with the loss of normal summer activities like camps or traveling to see grandparents, which won't be possible this year. So there's one question that you might like to answer, Rosa and Mary. And also another tip on how we can move more. One person is writing, I live alone and I can't convince myself to do some yoga or Pilates from online courses. I just walk at night. Maybe some tips there. From some ideas I've seen among friends is actually to do an online challenge together. So join the same class online to really encourage yourself. I'm also doing a monthly challenge with another friend on doing yoga every day and updating each other. So maybe that's an idea there. But over to you, Rosa and Mary, for those two questions.
Yeah, I think it's very, very difficult, and depending on the age of the children, but also the question is about grandparents that will be really missing seeing little children, or you might have aunts and uncles, like the wider family. Often, say for teenagers as well, they can feel very close to an aunt or an uncle rather than their parents if they're going through a difficult time. So it's really hard. I think what we'll have to do is continue with the virtual communication, like FaceTime, Skype, things like that. And then maybe if the weather gets better and we're allowed, often in places you're allowed to have groups of 5 that meet now, you could maybe go outdoors and have a picnic, making sure there's social distancing. But of course, you may have concerns there about not wanting perhaps to bring any germs from the city of Geneva, maybe to a grandparent who lives in the countryside or in a different part of actually even the world. So it is quite difficult. I think maybe just keeping the communication open and just expressing that it is a difficult time. Hopefully it will pass. And if they're little children, they can draw pictures and have paintings that they can send to their grandparents. And it's important not to forget anyone's birthday or anniversaries or special events, things like that. And I forget the second question now.
Sorry, Mary. It was a question about ways we can motivate ourselves to move more.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, actually, that's very difficult. I have put on one of those electronic things that tells me about how many steps I've done, and sometimes it makes me feel worse because I'll see a day will have gone by and I'll only have done 3,000. So it is quite hard. Maybe just finding out a time of the day that works well for you. It might be that it's early in the morning before you even look at your emails and look at your phone, Or for some reason, also people seem to actually acknowledge that everyone has to eat and take lunch. So sometimes between 12:30 and 2, you could take a half an hour and maybe go outside for a little walk then. Because if you leave it till the end of the day, you might just get too tired and then you'll think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. So it's quite hard. Another tip would be, because we're working at home, to maybe just put your gym clothes on in the morning. You could always put like a jumper over you if you have to do a meeting, but that way your gym clothes are on and you're ready to go, and you could even have your yoga mat down in front of the television and your DVD ready, so that would inspire you. But I would say, I know for me, I get really tired towards the end of the day and then I think, oh, forget it, I'll do it tomorrow. So maybe just try to do it a bit earlier, and maybe have some good music when you're exercising, because that keeps us motivated and gives us a bit of energy. Thanks.
A bit of music never hurts. Thank you, Mary and Rosa, and thank you all for joining us. We have some more comments and thank you notes streaming in, but unfortunately we do have to let you get back to the rest of the day. So thank you so much for joining us. For those other comments that have come in, we also do invite you. We all have separate individual concerns to take the tips that Mary and Rosa have shared, but also to speak with your supervisors for your unique cases as well, and also to look at the session from the 14th of May for a lot of the practical and HR related questions that you may have. But we hope that it's been a useful hour for you. We have on the screen now the additional resources, and we will share these links with you on the Commons website as well as by email before the end of the day today with the recording of today's session. So thank you all again for coming. If you do have any comments for us or questions, you can email us at commons@un.org for any feedback or any questions about the session. Also, for any questions for our counsellors, it's Staff Counsellor at un.org. So thank you again for taking the time to be with us. It's really been a pleasure to be with you online. So take very good care of yourselves and have a great week. And we really hope to see you soon online at the Commons. Thank you all, and thank you, Mary and Rosa.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Natalie, and your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.